Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It's the Monday, January 26, 2026 episode of the Marco Dre Show. Thank you for tuning in to hear today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. You know, first things first, I hope everyone listening had a safe weekend with all the snow and ice accumulations all across the country. You know, I'm looking at this article in the Associated Press right now, and it said there was 18 weather-related reported deaths that took place, roughly over the 40 states that were afflicted by this winter storm. And we saw, too, look at this, we've seen halted traffic, we've seen canceled flights. I think Sean Duffy was on earlier saying that there were 11,400 different flight cancellations across the country. Obviously because planes can't take off, they can't land on the tarmacs when, obviously, the snow is as it is. And you're seeing up to 2 feet of snow, at least, in forecast in many of these parts of the country, particularly the American Northeast and other places that were hit even harder across the country. We're seeing power outages. Roughly over 1 million people now across the nation on Monday morning were afflicted by that. And you're seeing freezing rain causing tree limbs to break, power lines to snap. We're seeing this inflicting crippling outages in northern Mississippi, parts of Tennessee. You know, I had a friend in Tennessee who posted just kind of an overview of her neighborhood, and we see there's trees down, there's power lines down, people without electricity. So if you're in any of these parts of the country, folks, that don't normally get snow, I advise you not to go out. Obviously, people aren't used to driving where there could be black ice and things of that nature. So just be careful and cautious of what you're doing. We're seeing massive school closures as well. So, again, be safe out there. Make sure you're storing up anything you need to be self-sufficient. I always tell you to do that. And, again, this is for times like right now. These unprecedented winter storms that take place that we're not used to having it across country. It's good to have water and food backed up and, obviously, a generator if you can have that. But if you don't have to go out, don't go out. That's just my take. And if you do go out, just please drive with caution. Drive with care, especially if your car's not up to the speed for driving in that type of weather. It's easy to slip and slide and crash and what have you. So please be safe. If you have any elderly relatives, neighbors, anything like that, just check up on them. Go see them. Again, stay safe out there because we're not through it yet, but it should be over by Wednesday is what I've been getting from meteorologists throughout the weekend. So it'll be over soon. So let's just try to get through this and let's be safe. Let's go into the elephant of the room now. We've got this situation that took place over the weekend in Minneapolis, the death of Alex Preddy, a 37-year-old ICU nurse at the VA hospital in the area. And it's a very tragic situation that took place. Apparently he was a part of this ICE signal group, and it's this well-funded group that I guess they patrolled the streets, they blow whistles, they alert residents, they film these operations of ICE agents. And he was said to have been protesting. So we know that he was in the streets. So there's several video footage of him being in the streets. He was accosting or approaching ICE along with these other women. We know he and another woman were pepper sprayed as they're being pushed to the sidewalk. And then it appears he's being detained. They're trying to get a hold of him. They jump on him. He's on the ground. He's resisting. He was carrying a firearm, just so we're all understanding this. He was doing that, and he was able to do so. Legally, he's able and permitted in the state to carry a firearm with him. He had a permit to carry, although he had no ID on him at the time, but he was licensed to do so. Again, in situations like this, one of the things you're taught when you have a CCW If you come into contact with police, it's not advised to escalate the situation and tension that's happening. What you're supposed to do is de-escalate, keep your hands in the air, do not put your hands by where your gun is. If an officer or officers are approaching you, or if they are detaining you. And he did the opposite. He decided to resist. These 4 or 5 officers are trying to take him down. He's resisting. And one of the officers finds that he has a gun on him. They remove the gun from the holster. And what happened was, and this is what's being alleged right now, we don't know the full story, but what's alleged is that the gun misfired. They had a loaded gun in his pocket, and these Sig Sauers that he had, the P320s, they don't have a safety on them. And they're known to misfire at times, and what's been said is that his gun misfired after the officer stepped back, the gun shot, and discharged a bullet. You hear an officer yell gun, and the officer behind him, who for some reason already was brandishing his firearm, he pulled it out of his holster, shoots from behind and kills Alex Peretti. People are asking me, do I believe this is justified or not? When you're looking at the video footage and you see right when they yell gun, Peretti is kind of moving upright and he looks like he's reaching for his gun holster. Now, of course, the gun is no longer there, so he didn't pose any lethal threat. Now, that doesn't mean they heard the gun discharge and an officer yells gun. He reaches for where his gun was. Maybe he thought it was going off. We don't know. And the officer behind, who clearly probably saw this, I'd have to suggest he did, shoots him from behind. This obviously needs to be investigated 100%. And if that officer is at fault, he needs to be fired and go to jail. We can't have things like this happen. This did need to happen too, folks, by the way. This whole thing did need to happen. And by the way, ICE shouldn't even be really confronting citizens. They shouldn't have contact with each other. They should be able to go out and serve their detainers. They should be able to do that freely, following the law, of course. You know, I believe in the Constitution. I believe in due process. I don't agree with ICE's stance, and I could probably relate to some of the issues these people have on the streets with ICE. I don't think they should just be going into homes without a warrant present and showing it to the people inside the home and why they're in the home. I believe in due process. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the Brett Kavanaugh stance of just show me your papers. This isn't East Germany. This shouldn't be happening from ICE or any type of law enforcement for that matter. And the idea is, well, if you're a citizen, you should be fine. Well, I'm sorry. You have to have cause to ask somebody for their identification, don't you? I don't have to go walk down the street and prove I'm a citizen. Again, who carries those documents with them, aside from a driver's license, which today doesn't even prove that you're a U.S. citizen? We saw that in California, where they gave out over 1 million different driver's licenses and commercial driver's license to illegal aliens. So that's not sign of proof. So who has the proof on them 24/7? Nobody. So that's a stupid statement, and again, I think it's unlawful, and I don't agree with it. But the converse of that is, what is the left doing in that city? Well, Minnesota, Minneapolis are a sanctuary city and state. That means they do not comply with federal immigration law. So they're violating their oath of office, too. So, you know, I hear people on the right saying, well, what ICE is doing is wrong. They shouldn't be serving these detainers without, of course, due process and, of course, without a warrant. They shouldn't be able to enter a home. And I agree with all that. 100% I agree with all that. And I don't agree with Stephen Miller's take when he says, hey, these ICE officers, we have your back, you have full immunity. Well, wait a minute. Full immunity to do whatever you want? Who would believe this? Obviously. Obviously nobody. You don't have immunity to do whatever the hell you want. What does that mean? So there's things on the right I disagree with absolutely 100%. I didn't like the way President Trump or Kristi Noem or Kash Patel were handling themselves, saying that this man was brandishing his weapon. He was not. He was recording them, which he has every right to do. And then President Trump got on saying, well, why does he have a gun on him? Well, he has a right to have a gun on him. He does. Whether you like it or not, he had a right to have a gun on this person. I think he handled himself poorly in that situation. Obviously resisting arrest and again, not listening to a lawful command, which is to step aside, let them go do what they were there to do. They were serving a detainer for an illegal alien from Ecuador, Jose Huerta Chuma. And this man was not even detained because this took place. This guy's on the streets, and he was, I believe, was arrested for domestic assaults, inflicting injury upon somebody else, and he was on the streets. He's an illegal alien. He wasn't detained. So there's so many different things that are, again, I have issues with ICE. I have issues with, again, a lot of this so-called protests. I don't believe these are protests when you're accosting federal agents. You can record, you can hold up your placards, you can shout obscenities, but why are you going up to ICE? Why are you approaching them? Why are you blowing whistles? Why are you blowing horns? Why are you following them when they are conducting lawful immigration law? That's a part of this I guess I won't really understand. But we've got to come to terms with both sides are doing some of the wrong things. Yes, it's a hard job to go out and be an ICE agent today. We're seeing these protests fling up all over the country. You see Jacob Fry, you see Tim Walz not putting out their own law enforcement that would obviously work with crowd control to prevent these protests from becoming violent, from accosting these ICE agents. Then we wouldn't have to see things like this. But because these two have called them off, now it's just ICE has to do crowd control now, which they're not supposed to be doing. So there's that, which again makes the situation even more dangerous. And again, by them not doing that, this of course increases the stress, and it allows them, when they get out there and say things like, go out and protest, get more violent, right? These escalate these situations. We saw this in California. ICE was trying to detain an illegal alien. He rams his car at them, drives his car right into him. They shot at him, hit him in the arm. They go to court. This guy gets off scot-free. Judge throws it right out. An activist judge in Los Angeles throws the case right out. So what does that tell people? Hey, I'm in a blue city, in a blue state. I'm good. If I want to drive my car at somebody, hey, I'm going to do it. Doesn't matter. Hey, I'll just tell them I was fleeing the scene. Don't worry about it. Those ICE agents, those thugs, you know, what they're called, stormtroopers, Gestapo, the SS, thugs, all the names you can throw at people. So yes, part of the federal government could be wrong in their approach. I agree with you on that one. I think that should be litigated, absolutely. I don't think that ICE agents should have carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want. I agree with you on that one. I don't want to see American citizens dying in the street. I don't agree with that. Whether I agree with Alex Preddy or not. But that's not the case here. The case is that this man approached ICE. These women around ICE, they were getting on their vehicle. They're blowing those whistles. ICE is talking to them, pushing them back. And then they're trying to detain them, and he's resisting arrest while he's armed. Which is, again, anyone that's been taught in a CCW class is taught not to escalate the situation. Keep your hands up. Let them know that you have a gun on you, where it is. Do not reach for that gun. Do not escalate the situation further. And everything Mr. Preddy did escalated that situation much further, unfortunately. So again, I don't like seeing people, too, by the way, mock this man. I don't know what his beliefs were. I don't know if I believe in much of what he does, but does he have a right to be shot in the streets? I don't think so. I don't think so. And again, that's why I said this has to go to be investigated. And if Keith Ellison wants to investigate it too, the state's attorney general, he should. And we should come to a consensus out here. Now again, we're looking at a video in hindsight from different angles. At the time, again, this all took place in a matter of a few seconds, where the man was disarmed, the gun misfired, and of course, someone yells gun, and he gets shot. Again, they don't know if he has multiple guns on him, too, by the way. Just because you see a guy take a gun off his hip doesn't mean he has a gun hidden down in his waistband. We don't know. We don't know. Someone hears a gun misfire and they say, gun. And, this guy is reaching for where his gun was or reaching for something, and a guy reacts. Not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the situation at hand. And that's what we're dealing with right now. Either way, ICE loses. Either way, ICE loses on this, because the other way, if they're found justifiable in what they did, these people still hate ICE. They're still going to riot. Things are still going to get out of hand in Minneapolis. Tensions are going to increase. We saw them yesterday evening attending this St. Paul hotel, trying to get inside. They attacked two ICE officials, causing one to bleed from his head. And again, no local police presence whatsoever. None. And you have to ask yourself, why don't we see this in Florida? Why don't we see this in Texas or Oklahoma or in any of these red states? Why are these protests not on hand? Because these groups that are well-funded, they're well-orchestrated, they're well-organized. A lot of these people are paid protesters. Most of them are white, too, by the way. Isn't that interesting to you? Yeah, they're mostly white people. White liberals, so-called. I don't know if these people believe in liberty, but this is where we are right now. But these people have taken the side of lawbreakers against their own government. And again, the voice of their own people. What did President Trump run on? He ran on, of course, mass deportations. We haven't gotten that, unfortunately. But these people have denied this. They have denied democracy, haven't they? President Trump ran on the policy of the opposite of what Joe Biden did, which was open our borders right up, let in anywhere from 12 to 20 million illegals. And now President Trump has to get those extra people out of the country, as well as the 25 million or so illegal aliens that have already been here. That's a lot of people, folks. I told you, there's tens of millions of illegals in this country. There are tens of millions of expired visa holders also in this country. So there's a lot of people that shouldn't be here that are here. So that's a problem. So yes, we've shut down the Democrats' policy of open borders. Trump has allegedly closed the border. But what we're seeing here is, again, Trump and ICE are really conforming to the electorate's wishes. So again, why is Jacob Fry? Why is Tim Walz? Why are they aiding and abetting? And again, leading against law enforcement being in their cities, doing their job. And again, they're protesting against federal law enforcement and again, removing illegal aliens from this country that have no jurisdiction to be here. So there's two sides of the coin. Again, you don't have to like that. You can protest against it, but you don't have a right to interfere with that as an American citizen. And as time goes on, we're seeing the citizenry get more and more and more brazen. We've seen ICE attacks on them up 1,300% just the last year. That's a lot, folks. And I'm talking about attacks. I'm not talking about just, protests. I'm talking about attacks. These people are getting attacked on the streets when they're going out and doing their job. And again, I have issues with various tactics they're using. I don't want anything unconstitutional to happen to anybody, citizen or illegal alien. Everybody has rights in this country. We have to follow the Constitution. Otherwise, we have nothing. And the same goes for the left. Where were these people when Joe Biden was opening up the southern border? Where were they when they were cutting through razor wire on the border of Texas? They didn't have any issue with that, did they? None whatsoever. So again, it's a very, it's a very strange position that we see American citizens are taking on this. Again, I don't understand this. Why you'd want someone here illegally in your state. But this comes from the whole communist playbook. They don't believe in borders. They don't believe in sovereignty. They don't believe in citizenry then. So if we're not going to follow immigration laws, if we're not going to follow the Constitution, which they are following immigration laws, passed by the legislature, signed by the president, approved by the judiciary, we don't have a country. So what is the answer here? Do we just open our border up to the entire world? That's not going to go over too well. Go look at ancient Rome, folks, if you think I'm being a little bit facetious here. But it's not too far-fetched. Certainly not too far-fetched. What we're seeing now is the escalation of violence on federal agents. It's another big problem. We see these so-called protesters spitting on ICE officers, throwing objects at them, all the curse words you can drum up. And again, this is problematic. These people have to deal with this every single day. Every single day. And again, I'm not justifying what took place on Saturday yet. I think that's up to obviously the investigations from the state and federal agents. But this idea that this man was brandishing a weapon, that he pulled a weapon on them, I don't think that was said, but that he shouldn't have had a weapon. Well, again, maybe it's not wise to bring a firearm to a protest like that when you know you're actively going to be engaging police. I don't know. That's not up for me to decide. I think it's a stupid thing to do. He was well within his legal right, though, to have a gun on him. So that can't be used against him. And again, that doesn't even warrant someone being shot, by the way, folks. Just so we're all clear on this. But who's behind these protests? I found this article in the New York Post from earlier this month. It said, who's really behind these Minneapolis ICE resistance movements? And the usual suspects come up, right? We've got George Soros financing $7.8 million from 2018 to 2023. No shock there. And they use different various groups. Again, according to public records, we see this group called Indivisible Twin Cities, which describes itself as a grassroots group of volunteers, which, of course, they're not. They're very well planned. And again, this has led to many of these anti-ICE raids in Minnesota. And it gets more and more out of control as time goes on. We're seeing, again, the people in the community, for example, one woman in this group inside Minnesota, let me see what her name is. Nakima Levy Armstrong is an attorney and civil rights activist who organized many of the protests after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis in 2020. So these people are reoccurring. They're just going from one situation, the defund the police movement, and now they're attacking ICE agents. And by the way, Minneapolis still hasn't recovered the number of police that have been removed since the 2020 riots that took place there. And this is going to be the winter of chaos really, really soon inside Minneapolis. We saw the No Kings. Again, all these people, all these things are very well orchestrated. These people fund them. They put money into it. These people are a lot of times bust into these areas. Not all these people live in Minneapolis. A lot of these people are bust in. A lot of people are paid to be there. Why else would you go out in negative 6-degree weather on a Saturday morning, folks? Seems a little bit odd to me. Just thought I'd share that with you. And by the way, if you think these people are just, nice, citizens of the, neighborhood, let me play you this from James O'Keefe. He's an investigative journalist. And he was in Minneapolis this weekend. And he got this text, and I'll let him explain it here in just a moment. But this goes to show you how well organized these groups are. That there are people that will track you, they will expose you, they will dox you. Maybe that's why ICE agents are covering their faces. I know a lot of people, especially people I respect on the right, say, "Well, who are these people to put these masks on their face like this?" Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's because they're being doxxed. They're being followed. They don't want themselves or their family to be at risk when they go home every day. Do they? I don't think so. I don't think you would like it either. Again, just thought I'd share that with you. But here, listen to James O'Keefe. This is very startling. And again, never underestimate the left and what they want to do. Take a listen to this.
This is James O'Keefe in downtown Minneapolis. We have a team of undercover reporters still inside the mob. I was at the scene of the shooting, covering it this morning, and basically we barely got out of there alive. There were a few hundred that surrounded us, started throwing ice bottles at us. A few hit us, hit our vehicle. They were starting to rip off my bulletproof vest, so we got out of there. We were followed, we were tailed. And here we are right now. We just got this message, and it says, we know that you're in Minneapolis. You're with O'Keefe and his crew of Nazis. You're in a white Ford license plate. They actually wrote the license plate down from Florida. You have 1 hour to leave or you're dead. You have 1 hour to leave or you're dead. We are going to produce our footage, gathering everything we've got from this weekend. We're going to put our report together along with the hidden camera footage that we have. We still have undercover people in the field. Please pray for my team's safety. This is worse than anything I could have possibly imagined. I have security with me, former Marine, and he said that it was worse than overseas, and it was certainly anything worse than I've seen the cartel at the border.
Can you imagine this? He's a guy on the ground just investigating. He's not on his side. He's just documenting what he sees on the ground. And they're threatening his life. They're threatening his crew's life. He's never seen anything like this? Even worse than the drug cartels? Really? So it goes to show you who's in these groups, what they were and are willing to do, how they will threaten you. The throwing of ice bottles at people, I mean, that could kill you, folks. This is not a peaceful protest. And again, I ask, where are the local police? Where are they? Why have they not been dispatched to help ICE agents? Do they want a civil war on the streets of Minneapolis? I think so. I think that's what we're foreseeing right now. Let me just point out this really quickly before we move on. We have from President Trump, I guess he was in talks with Tim Walz as of late, and they are going to be coordinating on possibly resolving what's taking place on the ground finally. I don't think President Trump should pull out. Republicans right now in the House and Senate are encouraging him and trying to coax him to have all immigration enforcement leave Minneapolis. I think that is the wrong move. If you give these people a little bit of leeway, if you give them a little victory here, they will continue on doing this everywhere across the country. If this gets out of hand even more, and by the way, I said last week he should have called in the Insurrection Act. I don't know why he hasn't. Things are getting out of hand. They're going to continue to get out of hand. And it's going to be more unruly. And you see more of Minneapolis be destroyed. That's what you're going to see here. And by the way, this is also a drain on the local commerce and economy as well. Not that they're concerned about that. But again, I just find it so funny that right when we found out this massive fraud that took place, that we're all of a sudden seeing these protests spring up. And of course, the focus has gone from the fraud in the state to ICE. It just makes you wonder. Anyways, Trump took to Truth Social, and he said, Governor Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that we are looking forward for any and all criminals that they have in their possession. The governor very respectfully understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. He was happy that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I. We have had tremendous success in Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Louisiana, and virtually every other place that we have touched, and even in Minnesota. Crime is way down, but both Governor Walz and I want to make it better. President Donald J. Trump. So that could maybe lead to something positive. Only one can know how true it is or what will happen as a result of this. But things are getting out of hand very, very quickly in the streets of Minnesota. There we go, folks. Minnesota. Who would have thought, right? You know, I have this quote from John Adams, and I was looking at it earlier, and I said, this totally reflects exactly where we are right now as a people, both left and right. And by the way, stop categorizing yourself as left or right. What, everything that Trump does is correct and everything that the left does is wrong? And vice versa? But here's what he said. He said, our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. We have to follow the Constitution. We have to follow the rule of law across the board. You've heard me speak out against the bombing of boats in the Caribbean, the illegal extraction and capture of the president of Venezuela, the threatening of using military force in Greenland, and of course in Iran, which we'll talk about later in the show. This has got to stop. You've heard me talk out against the tariffs that Trump has put on. Why? Well, number one, because Congress is supposed to enact tariffs, and then it's supposed to be signed into law by the president. It's not just supposed to come from the executive branch. That's not how our government is supposed to function. So we can look at all these things and say, are we following the Constitution? Do we really follow the Constitution in this country anymore? A government program gets carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want? Really? I don't think our founders would agree with that. I certainly don't agree with that. I have problems with that. So a lot of things are taking place right now that are void of the Constitution. And I find that a major, major problem. And again, I don't just say things because of my beliefs or that I voted for President Trump. I look at what's constitutionally sound. That's the way you need to approach things. Are we following the rule of law? Are we following the Constitution? Because anyone will say, hey, I'm right, you're wrong. It doesn't matter. What does the Constitution say? And if we aren't following the Constitution, then we cease to being a constitutional republic. If we melt our borders down, we cease to having any type of sovereignty. And if we have no sovereignty, we have no Constitution, what are we citizens of? That's a good question, isn't it? Now, some people are suggesting that there will be a civil war this summer. I don't know how true that'll be. I don't know how much this will escalate in Minneapolis. I do know that if we remove our troops, troops, ICE agents from, maybe that was a Freudian slip, who knows? Maybe I'm listening to the left's rhetoric too much and calling them troops now. Our ICE agents from the ground, this will become a major problem. Because now this gives them leeway to do whatever the hell they want. It goes from Minneapolis to Chicago, maybe over to New York, who knows? Maybe it goes out to Los Angeles and San Fran Schmucko. Nobody knows. And then it's just this upheaval of chaos. It's uncivilness in the streets and what have you. It's a big problem. But the gist of this article I have here is saying that the left will win this new civil war if we let them. Why? Because we have cowardly Republicans that are going to cave to every conceivable manner in order to try to forestall a civil war. And at every single level, they're going to give into the left so-called compromises to their principles. And they're going to betray their voters and, of course, our founding fathers. Our founding fathers have been betrayed since the Civil War, probably even before that. So that's nothing new. Anyone who studied the Civil War. But we have to come to terms with where we are as a country right now. We're at a very big watershed moment right now. And are we going to go the way of just adopting what the president wants to do? Are we going to simply say one man needs to rule? Because that's what's going to happen if these things continue on. I don't think we can give into the left's version of open borders. I don't think that's very good. But they're calling for a summer of love circa 2026 now. And it won't be about election integrity. It'll be about immigration. Everyone that wants to come into this country can come in this country. No one is illegal, right? That's what the platitudes we continue to hear out. And it's going to be a big problem if we let this get out of control. This is not stopped right now. And I hope between Tim Walz and President Trump, they resolve this. And there's law and order on the streets, as there should be in every single city in this country, where public safety is the number one issue. Because that's been ignored in Minneapolis for quite some time now. And those seeds that were planted led to what took place on Saturday morning. And it did not have to happen that way. So this is going to be a big challenge. Democrats obviously want the illegal votes. The Republicans want illegal aliens removed from this country. So I don't know what is going to take place. I don't think anybody really can. But we do know these people are very, very well organized. They are professional protest agitators. That's what they are. They're there to agitate ICE so they cannot conduct their job. We know they're very well funded. Look what Soros does. Look at the Tides Foundation. Look at all these other people that put their money into this. I saw this group being talked about this morning, and the founder is Mark Ruffalo. And they get people to invest and donate and what have you, and they back these other groups. So these are not, again, and at all, they're not organic in and of itself. The genesis of these programs they're well funded. They have millions strong army that will go wherever they want them to go. Don't think everyone in the streets is from Minnesota there, just so we're all clear on that. Most of them are probably from out of town. That's why they go and destroy their own communities. So it's very communistic in and of itself. And they've been told to use hate, use violence, again, by the left-wing media that promotes it, by the politicians that are there to promote it. And again, they're highly organized, they're proactive, and they will do whatever they are told to do. Just like what we saw in 2020. And that should have been put down right away as well. It was not. And that led to what? $2 billion worth of damage? Then you have Tim Walz's wife coming out saying, I love the smell of burning rubber in the morning. And I say to myself, who would love that? That your cities are burning? Who would want such a thing to take place in their own community? Why would they want people to get hurt? Why would they want business to be ransacked, looted, burned to the ground? It's a very, very odd thing. We're seeing this from American politicians who have completely abandoned their oath of office too, by the way. So, folks, that's where I am on this whole shooting in Minneapolis over this weekend. I do believe that, obviously, we're seeing smoke and mirrors. We're now focused on this shooting versus the fraud that we're seeing taking place inside Minneapolis, all at the behest of Tim Walz. So it works out well for him. It's been good strategy for him to get everyone to focus on ICE, on immigration versus the fraud of illegal aliens in his city. That's what you're seeing right now, and that's the push you're going to see right now. You're seeing already the Democrats in Congress are coming out saying we shouldn't fund ICE anymore. That's what you're seeing right now. And should they win in this election year, by the way, look, we're seeing this upheaval in an election year. They are going to try to do everything they can it's gone from defund the police to now defund ICE. So now whatever illegal aliens are here, they're here to stay. And this is how they win elections, folks. This is how these things continue to happen more and more. Let's talk about that fraud, though, right now. Let's not lose track. Let's not do that. By the way, we still haven't gotten the Epstein files yet. No one's gone to jail for the Russia hoax, J6 committee, COVID, any of this. None of these people have been arrested, and no one's been arrested for this yet, as far as I'm concerned. And by the way, I've been told by people that Tim Walz is known about the at least $1 billion of this fraud, or maybe he's even involved in it. Who knows? Yep, we got fraud taking place all over the country, and no one's saying a damn thing about it. No one's been arrested. So let's never lose track of the main issue here, is the fraud. This is what they want. Don't look about what's happening over here, but focus on this now. When this fades out, we'll go to something else in the city. Just don't worry about the fraud. So this in the Associated Press says Minnesota-run programs have been defrauded, is what public officials are now saying. And it says half of more of the roughly $18 billion in federal funds that supported 14 Minnesota-run programs since 2018 have been stolen. So we have roughly $9 billion that have been stolen from the taxpayer. This is what a federal prosecutor was saying on Thursday. So, First Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said that the scale of the fraud puts services at risk for people who need them, including adults leaving addiction treatment centers who needed help finding a stable place to live, and children with autism who were seeking one-on-one therapy. Now, while prosecutors typically see the fraud manifest as providers overbilling them, Thompson said in a news conference in Minneapolis that companies have been created to provide zero services while submitting claims to Medicaid and pocketing federal funds for international travel, luxury vehicles, and, of course, lavish lifestyles. How was this able to happen? How was this able to happen? Since you know, for quite some time this has been going on and nothing's been done about it. They've been turning an eye to this. Now, the magnitude of this cannot be overstated. What they see inside Minnesota is not just a handful of bad actors committing some crimes. It's a industrial size scale fraud that's taking place. $9 billion? By the way, I watched over the weekend a Somali woman at an airport. She had $800,000 in a suitcase. Can you imagine $800,000 in a suitcase? How the hell did she get $800,000? Heck, if I go to the if I went to the bank and I kept going and saying I want 9,000, and I kept doing that over and over again, 9,000, 9,000, 9,000, they're going to arrest you for what's called structuring, folks. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to say that's really suspicious what you're doing, Mr. Gerace. Yet this one has $800,000 in cash in her suitcase. I don't know how this could happen. How is this happening? Now, Trump has, capitalized on the fraud for these cases to, again, target just the Somali community and the diaspora inside Minnesota, which, again, has the highest Somali population in the country. But there's 82 of the 92 defendants in the child nutrition, housing services, and autism program schemes are Somali Americans. So that's what the U.S. Attorney's Office for Minnesota has been stating. Now, in October of last year, Waltz initiated a third-party audit and paused payments to these 14 high-risk Medicaid programs for 90 days. Going out saying we'll not tolerate fraud, we'll work with, obviously, the federal partners to ensure fraud is stopped and the fraudsters are caught. Well, last week, Waltz appointed a director of the program, Integrity, who has been tasked with finding and preventing fraud statewide. Now, it's not been stopped in his Republican counterparts from criticizing him and his administration for this failure, again, to protect the Minnesota taxpayer dollars. So you've seen $9 billion wasted. How could this go on for so long and there's no oversight of any of these programs? No one's getting any of these services and nobody figured this out? And by the way, if this could happen in Minnesota, this could happen anywhere. Which is why I told you last week, let's look at California. Let's look at New York. Let's look all over the place. How much of the taxpayer dollars being wasted and who's ripping it off? Who's getting rich off it? You can look at the homelessness scam going on in California right now. They have $24 billion lost. Really? We have $24 billion and we don't know where it's gone? And by the way, I'll go a step further. You can look at the Pentagon's last 8 audits that they failed. Where's that money gone? We talk about the founders. We talk about, obviously, we live in a republic. The founders would have never envisioned fraud of this scale in this country because government was supposed to be very small and limited. Instead, it's been bloated, out of control spending, printing money, the devaluing of the dollar, and it's been out of control for some time. Look at the size and scope of government right now. It is out of control. A lot of us, like myself included, were very, very happy when we talked about Doge. We said, we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to figure out where this money's going. We need to close these programs that have nothing to do with, really, Americanism. Got no benefit to the American people. And over time, it gets more and more out of control. And we're seeing it in these programs inside Minneapolis, inside Minnesota. But this is just, again, folks, this is a small scale of what happens across the country. A very, very small scale. Now, of course, it's very damning. We do have a governor who's, again, turning a blind eye to all this. Even when he was in his debates for VP, he was coming out and saying, we need to fund this program. There are all these programs that are ripping off the taxpayer. Now, the announcements Thursday follow years of investigation that began with $300 million in the Feeding Our Future scheme, for which 57 defendants have been convicted. Prosecutors said that the Feeding Our Future nonprofit was at the center of the country's largest COVID-19 related fraud scam, when defendants exploited a state-run, federally funded program intended to provide food for children. So never underestimate what these people will do. They set up these NGOs, they set up all these programs, these so-called programs, Same thing, autism clinics. This is how they're getting this fraud money. They're billing that they're serving so many people, and of course, nothing is being done here. There's zero oversight. And by the way, it's learning facilities, autism, helping the poor, all these programs. And they're just getting rich off it. Not as dumb as they look, folks. Not as dumb as they look. But now we have to get charges, of course. We have to figure out who knew what. And we shouldn't forget about this. Number one, we should not forget about any of this. That they're ripping off Medicaid. They're ripping off a lot of these social welfare programs as well. But this is a major problem. This is what they don't want you to see right now. This is the reason for all these protests. Focus on ICE. Don't focus on the fraud. Focus on Trump. Don't worry about what's happening here. Forget about it. Forget about it. Let's look at what ICE is doing. And, of course, we see the uptick in these very well-planned protests. All right, folks, I'll let you read more on that as time goes on. But let's talk to one more thing before we kind of move away from what's happening in Minnesota. This was written last year in Fortune. And it said here, Larry Ellison once predicted citizens will be on their best behavior amid constant recording. Now, his company, I'm sure he's referring to Oracle, will play a key role in social media. What are they talking about now? We're talking about things like civil war and what have you, and things of that nature. This is very concerning when people say these types of things, especially coming from a technocrat like Larry Ellison, who now helps run TikTok. But it says here, over a year ago, the Oracle co-founder and chairman, Larry Ellison, described a future where everyone, including law enforcement, will face regular surveillance as daily life is documented seemingly nonstop. Now, again, I say this to you not to scare you, but I say this to you because this is where they are going to be pushing you. Well, we see ICE in the streets acting like this. We've got to have body cam footage on everybody. And everyone says, okay, that makes sense. When they're working, they have body cams. Okay, fine. Well, what do they do now when they want to control more of your life? See, what we're getting from these cell phones is not good enough. If we had this type of technology in the streets, we'd see everything, every single moment. We have the sound, we have the video footage, the audio, and it'll keep people safe. And some people will go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense, right? Okay. But do you really want to be in a police state? Constant surveillance that's recorded 24/7? Put in their databases information about you? It's a total lack of privacy. It's a total lack of the Fourth Amendment if we allow this to happen. Why would we allow this to happen? So, a lot of this, folks, is very troublesome. I don't think I need to tell you that, obviously, this is wrong if we allow this to happen. But we're seeing this pop up in many institutions. If you go to Disney, they have you on these full surveillance cameras all over the park. They can track you. If they see your wrist, they will approach you, and they will detain you. This is getting out of control for many different reasons. And by the way, the same thing goes with street cameras. Who asked to put up street cameras in various cities? Surveillance nonstop? So they can record you day in and day out? Now what they have in California, by the way, they have cameras on the throughways. Excuse me, not the throughways, the freeways, rather. It's similar to a throughway, of course. But now what they can do is if they see your car speeding, they'll just send you a ticket. Because you're constantly being surveilled every step of the way. Folks, that becomes more and more tyrannical. And again, people get used to it. It's always, though, for your safety, don't you know? It's for your safety that we're putting this out there. It's for your safety that we have to have these cameras up and record you 24/7. And now we have to have programs like Operation Gideon that record everything off the internet now, scrape the internet. If you say anything we don't like, we'll come give you a little knock at your door by local law enforcement. You see how tyrannical this is becoming. And they're going to use things like what we saw in Minneapolis this weekend as a reason to continue to push for this. Cameras on the streets. Cameras on every corner. To record your every single move. Where's the privacy? We're supposed to be guaranteed our privacy in this country. Our privacy in our homes. We're not seeing any of that anymore. Especially now with these cell phones, the cameras that can record everything at any given moment. We didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for this. I don't think you should sign up for this. And don't give me that, well, I don't have anything to hide nonsense. You have a right to be free in your persons. That is the Fourth Amendment, the right to privacy. And we're not allowed that out in public anymore. Now, maybe a private corporation like, Disney or some nonsense, when you walk into their their parks, they can argue they can put those up for safety. Again, I don't know what's going to happen at a theme park. I don't know. But this is where they're taking us, folks. And they use these as protocols and prototypes for something much further later on. So I just wanted to bring that aspect up to you. Again, these are their plans, folks. These are their plans. And he's the same guy that wants digital currency, right? They want digital currency on you. They don't want to have dollar bills anymore. And they talked about this over the weekend at the World Economic Forum. That's why you're seeing the price of gold right now, $5,100. When I last talked to you on Friday, I said it was $5,001. So over the course of a weekend, it shot up. Because the value of the dollar is crashing because of last week's speeches at the World Economic Forum. They want a new world order, folks, and surveillance is going to be one of the top things, and of course, digital currency is going to be one of the other big things. So never put your guard down. I always tell you, pay for things in cash too, by the way. Tangible currency is very, very important. And we should never do away with that. Just so we're clear on this. But we are moving away from the dollar, and as a result of that happening, we're seeing the price of gold go up. And that's the way things work. All right, let's move on to something else. Folks, we got about 10 minutes remaining in the program. In the Hill, it says Venezuela's acting president said she's had enough of orders from Washington, D.C. Well, no kidding. Delcy Rodriguez said that she had enough of her orders from D.C. In a speech to a group of oil workers on a broadcast in Venezuela's state-run television network on Sunday, Rodriguez's remarks come a little more than 3 weeks since President Trump announced the capture of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro in an audacious military raid in Caracas. And he has since declared that the United States would take over the country's oil industry and dictate orders to their government. That's not going to work out well. That's not going to work out well, is it? They don't want to be run by D.C. They want their own sovereignty in Venezuela. But again, it all comes down to the oil. Nothing to do with the so-called drugs that are not coming in from Venezuela. But she said enough already of Washington's orders over politicians in Venezuela. Let Venezuelan politicians resolve our differences and our internal conflicts. This republic has paid a very high price for having to confront the consequences of fascism and extremism in our country. Now, Trump greenlit Rodriguez staying in her role after, of course, this capture and transfer of Maduro to New York to stand trial for criminal drug charges, which, again, I can't see any of that holding up to. That's a bunch of nonsense. That was all illegal, too. Trump told reporters last week that Rodriguez has shown very strong leadership so far, had done a very good job, and was working with the United States to move millions of barrels of oil into the United States. Well, that's what it was all about. That's the whole thing we wanted. We wanted oil delivered to the United States. Now, what they didn't tell you originally was that this oil is extremely thick. It's got to be pumped out of the ground. That's how thick it is. And it's going to be a lot more costly. It's going to cost more infrastructure, more developments, more investments. And a lot of oil companies in the United States don't want to do this. They don't want it. In fact, it cost them an extra $20 just to put together a barrel of this oil to be shipped for further refining in the United States through oil tankers, which again is more costly than it would be sending it through, a pipeline coming from Canada. So, we thought this was going to be lucrative, and of course it turns out not to be at all. So we're seeing those tensions flaring up. God knows what will happen if we decide to take out Rodriguez and what will happen in that country. But remember how that was all a big thing a couple of weeks ago? Right? Just, 23 days ago. Same day they were supposed to tell us why they didn't release the Jeffrey Epstein information. Just thought I'd share that with you one more time, too. But the idea that Everyone's going to be rich. Everyone's going to become prosperous now because we've taken over the oil in Venezuela. And what do we find out? It's not as lucrative as we thought it would be. And nothing about it, though. Nothing about the Venezuelans being free. Remember, that was the big thing? They're all free now. Maduro's gone. Everyone's free. Even though Rodriguez herself is a socialist. Everyone in the cabinet is a socialist. The military. Everything is still in place that would keep up the existing status quo in the government. Notice how that went away. You don't see it on social media. Most of it was AI anyway. Most of it was other rallies in other countries, too. It wasn't the actual Venezuelan people by and large. But those sentiments are gone now. That's in the purview. We're on to something else now. Minnesota now. It's so ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyways. Oh, but Trump is calling for new elections, right? And he wants Maria Corina Machado, who gave him the Nobel Peace Prize, to now be the president. No kidding. No kidding. He wants someone that'll play ball. Absolutely. Oh, by the way, speaking of not playing ball, look at this woman in Virginia. Look at this lunatic. I told you before this woman's going to be a disaster when she was first elected, and it turns out to be I was absolutely right about this. This in the Blaze Media. It says there, Abigail Spanberger is pushing full-fledged Marxism, their new taxes, gun restrictions, and sweeping DEI mandates. Well, who would have thought the moderate Democrat is really a left-winger? This one would be great in California, too, by the way. She should have ran for governor in California. Who knows? It says there, if you thought Virginia Democrats were moderate, especially Abigail Spanberger, who, by the way, was a CIA agent, yep, you might want to think again. It says here that things are only going to get worse as time goes on, and this should be remembered when it comes time for the midterms. Let me give you just a few things that they're proposing. Taxes and economic policy is becoming full-fledged Marxism. Well, no kidding. They're proposing new and expanded taxes. Yep. Coming to... How did you go from Glenn Youngkin to this woman? I don't understand it for the life of me. What a surprise, though. They've introduced new bills now that will expand on sales tax base, including things like landscaping, gym memberships, vehicle repairs, food delivery, home repairs, raising the revenue beyond the traditional goods, and of course the progressive income tax brackets as well. But that's not all. No, never is with these communists, is there? They're now proposing creating a new tax bracket, higher tax brackets, meaning people with taxable income over a certain threshold. They're saying now 600,000 will pay higher rates than those with lower incomes. Well, obviously, one could imagine, the federal employee will get a tax break versus everybody else. So again, we know that Virginia very much borders D.C. A lot of people, especially in Northern Virginia, will work with the government, of course, and they're going to get tax breaks with Abigail Spanberger, right? The same people that put her in office. Isn't that amazing? So yes, everyone else will have to pay more. There are now proposals now that will give special tax subtractions for federal retiree programs and incentives for federal people in that category. While you who didn't even work for the government, you'll see a broader tax increase. Yep. And don't think they're not coming for the guns. Of course they would. They always do. Just like Gavin Newsom in California. Just like Kathy Hochul in New York. Just like J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, they're going to come for mandatory waiting periods now on guns. A ban on leaving your gun unattended in your vehicle. And also a state fire purchaser licensing system. Again, it all makes sense now. It all makes sense. It's California on the East Coast now. Look at this, though. She wants to do an 11% tax on ammunition and guns and civil liability for the gun industry participants for crimes committed using guns that they sold or built. What? Let me understand this for a second. If you bought a Glock and you're in Virginia and you go commit a crime with it, she wants to hold the gun industry participants accountable? Is that what she's saying? My God, who's going to want to sell guns in that state? And that's the whole point. No, I mean, obviously that's unconstitutional. That'd be like buying a Ford and getting drunk and running someone over and then them going to sue Ford. I mean, that's stupid. Absolutely ridiculous. But that's how these communists think. They're going to punish everybody. Unless, of course, you're a violent protester. Then that's okay. And, of course, now they're going to come back and enact DEI, ESG. They really want to expand this radical bias. And, of course, diversity training for professionals, nurses, real estate agents, and, of course, law enforcement. Why would you need that if you're a real estate agent? I have no idea. Who knows? But this is what they're doing. This is what they want. They want to turn this into a communist hellhole. That's what they want for Virginia. Right? Yep, the land of Washington, Jefferson, is not going to be the land of chaos. Absolutely. 100%. Oh, it's sad what's happening in Virginia now. And I know a lot of people in Virginia that don't want this. That's very sad, folks. But I could have seen this a mile away. A mile away, I could have seen this. All right, folks, I had a couple more articles. I was going to talk about what's happening now in the Middle East with Iran, and I was going to talk about a hopeful Ukraine-Russia peace talks fomenting right now, which are always a good thing. I don't have enough time. We'll go over this more tomorrow. I obviously wanted to focus on what was taking place with what's happening in Minneapolis for you, so you had a good grasp on that. And I hope you do moving forward, of course. Folks, thanks again for being here today. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for tuning into today's show. And I hope you learned something. And I hope you'll share it with other people. Folks, make sure you're keeping your mind sharp, keeping your body strong, staying prepped with food, water, ammo, money, gold, tools, anything you need to be self-sufficient. That's always very important. Again, if you're in any of these areas conflicted with this weather, stay safe, stay inside if you need to. Don't go out unless you have to. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.